So let's get this, I was going to say party started. It's kind of early for me to start a party, but I'd just like to say welcome to everybody. Let's see. Are you seeing my screen okay, Bob?
I can see you just fine.
Okay, there we go. So again, welcome everyone to Acxiom's webinar. Today, we're talking about retail workforce management trends and what's happening out in the industry for you guys. I am Robin Merritt, and I'm very excited to say that today I have a new role. I'm the Chief UKG Strategy Officer. I'm here to help host our two esteemed guests that are with us, and I'll introduce them in just a few minutes. The purpose, the scope, the reason we're having this webinar is that Bob and Michael Gondak and I have been able to be out into the field, whether it was at a conference or one-to-one with our clients in some of our executive meetings. And we noticed there was some trends that were happening in retail. And normally we always do, but there were some really huge trends happening for all of you. And we thought, how does this impact workforce management? And then how can Acxiom help you? So that's the webinar. That's how it came together, right? So let me start with, first, we have Bob Clements, our CEO and president with us. You recognize him. He's been on many webinars. He's very famous in this space. So we're lucky we got a few minutes with him today. Bob, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Robin. I'm happy to be here. For those that don't know me or don't know my background, I am Bob Clements. I'm the Chief Executive Officer at Acxiom Group. I've been in the workforce management space for much of my career and working on both the product side as well as on the consulting side of the house. So this is kind of the bread and butter for what we do. And as Robin said, it's been really exciting to be kind of back out in the field. We've been doing so much remotely for so long, but as our clients have reopened their offices, as we've gotten back engaged in corporate, these things that we're talking about today are really things that we keep hearing about over and over again. And we hope that we can share, at least at a high level, solutions for some really common problems that we're seeing in the retail workforce management space.
Absolutely. And by the way, he didn't have a choice. I mean, it's not like we had to, So the next person I would like to introduce you to, I'm going to slip back and forth in saying his title exact. It's Dr. Michael Gondak is with us today. He does remind me of that quite often. So if I slip, I'm so sorry. But today we have the esteemed Dr. Michael Gondak. He is our Vice President of North American Sales. Welcome, Doctor.
Thank you. And don't worry, I'm not a real doctor. So if anything happens.
You just play one on TV.
I do, yes, exactly. Yes, so I'm Michael Gondak. I've been in the workforce management space for close to 25 years now, which is 25 years longer than I thought I was going to be in the space. A lot on the product side, I've done everything from answer the help desk to run my own company for 7 years. So it's been great. Been at Acxiom for a couple of years now. And as Robin mentioned, a couple of years ago, I finished a doctorate in management with a focus in employee engagement. And so what I try to do is the lens that I bring to really all of our solutions is how does this impact the employee and that engagement of the employee leading to an engaged customer.
Right, thanks. And these things already, this is very helpful for me. What I've been told was he was a real doctor. So now that I have truly who he is, this is good to know for me. All right, we have 5 retail trends. There are a few more, but really the 5 retail trends that we know impact you every day and that you're thinking about right now and into 2023. So we've got about 25 minutes each on each one of them. So I hope no, I'm just kidding. I was going to say, I hope you blocked out enough time.
It'll be a long webinar.
Right? So you can imagine there's 5 trends. So we're going to go through them very quickly, take some notes. And then as usual, at the end of it, we're going to speak a little bit about what we're doing to help our clients. Please do not hesitate. Reach out to any of us generically to Acxiom, however we can help. At the end, we'll make sure that you have our emails because these trends are impactful. And if you just make small tweaks and understand them even more in depth, if you need to bring in HR or operations, if they're not with you today, it's those kind of things that I think will be impactful after you hear the trends and what we're seeing. Let's get right into it. So workforce management modernization. Okay, that's a big one. Everybody's moving, and everybody moves cities and states, but everybody is moving some way or another in workforce management. Is it a new tool? Is it doing a vendor selection? Is it looking at the version I'm on? Am I on premise? Am I going to cloud? You did hear, probably if you're on UKG, you got the letter that UKG is sunsetting and having end of life of Workforce Central. Everybody's moving and doing something different and modernizing. So I'm going to bring Dr. Gondak. See, it kicks me a little bit. Dr. Gondak, why is everybody moving? Like, what's happening?
Well, really what's happened goes back several years, right? And it's the underlying technology change and the fundamental structure of the technology changed. And that allowed for two things. One is the proliferation of artificial intelligence and machine learning. And the newer, more modern systems just really have that baked into their core. What's important to remember, though, is that people often think that artificial intelligence is smarter than human intelligence. So it's important to weigh the value and what AI can do around things like forecasting, et cetera, with really that human and emotional intelligence of taking care of your employees to get the most out of them. The second is the opening of architectures and the proliferation of API-based integrations. That's really allowed things like best of breed and specialized products to be able to really fit the needs of customers so that they don't have to compromise. Bob, do you have more to say about best of breed?
Yeah, well, I think one of the interesting trends that we've seen is that while it's important for retailers as they look at modernizing, and I guess, let me take a little bit of a step back. As much as we try to keep up on our workforce management technology, I think a lot of retailers have fallen behind in workforce management technology, especially when they're on premise. And that's because they need to upgrade and they need to justify the cost of that upgrade. They need to keep plotting kind of forward, which is hard to do. As we move into the SaaS-based world, that need to justify goes away because upgrades are naturally part of that process. And then you get to take advantage of all of this new technology, which has real and material and tangible benefits to it. And getting back to what Michael was just talking to for a minute about the openness of the solutions and the idea of best of breed, is that what we're seeing more and more often is that organizations are settling on or moving to a core workforce management system. This is the system that becomes a system of record for everything that they do related to workforce management. But what they might find is they've got specialized needs or they want to take advantage of certain capabilities that may not be part of that core system. Maybe it's the certain way that AI works on a particular tool, or maybe it's adding on a mobile solution that does more than just simply the workforce management piece. It could be that I want to add on a specialized absence solution. But ultimately, it used to be that having a best of breed solution, one that took kind of a core time and attendance solution and bolted on other pieces, created a bit of a Frankenstein, right? It was ugly, it was ungainly, it was very hard to maintain. And because it was on premise, you had all of this hardware cost and infrastructure cost associated with doing it. Now that we're in the cloud, between the combination of being in the cloud and open APIs, the idea of having an integrated workforce management system, one that takes the best of a couple of different point solutions and couples that onto that core platform, becomes not only a viable solution, but becomes a beneficial solution. So we're seeing a lot of retailers look at that best of breed solution, if you will.
That's a great point. And something else too, that when we first started working with customers about what's the best solution for them, something, Bob, that you spent a lot of time on was talking about how long it did take workforce management vendors to get to the place that they are today. While ERP and some of the Oracles and SAPs in the back end, your back office solutions had gone cloud-based pretty quickly. And so catching up, we had to catch up technology-wise, and now we're catching up functionality-wise. And then you had all this newness that kind of start to compress on you as well. So you have to modernize, whatever that looks like for you, right?
Well, okay, and to your point, it feels like, to your point, Robin, it feels like right now, every conversation we're having with every client is, I'm either in the middle of a vendor selection, I just finished a selection and I'm migrating over to something else, or I'm getting ready to consider what my options are in the future. Right. It just, that modernization thing seems to be very top of mind for everybody right now.
Right. All at once. Yeah. Yeah. Now, the next one's going to seem a little more tactical. But when I say it, which is the second one being the payroll budget agility, it seems very tactical for some of you that maybe are more on the technology side, but just listen up, because this is what's happening in the real world today, right? There are so many things happening from the labor piece of it that are impacting the technology needs and the employee needs. So tying this all back, like the wage rate pressures that we have, the environment that we live in retail, changing back, changing again. So Bob, why don't you I mean, there's some problems here. Help us unpack this.
Well, just even over the last couple of years, or even over the last year, we've seen a huge change in terms of the retail labor dynamics, right? A year ago, we were stressed out about a labor shortage, and yeah, maybe we still are, but ultimately we're also feeling a lot of wage pressure right now. We're feeling inflation pressure. There's a looming recession out there, and the retailers that we're talking to and working with are needing to respond by managing their payroll really aggressively, and that could be cutting payroll, it could be reallocating payroll. The challenge that we see is that most retailers don't have tools that allow them to be really dynamic with their payroll. Their workforce management system is a siloed tool at the store level, right? Yeah, you're managing all of your stores in your WFM system, but you don't have a big dial. Well, actually you do, you may have a big dial that allows you to move everybody down or everybody up a little bit, but you have a hard time really being able to be agile with your payroll budget. How do you add a little bit more labor over here and take a little bit more take a little bit of labor over here? How do you take into account all of the changes that are happening market by market and do it in a way that is timely? Right now, too many retailers are dependent on Excel as their solution.
Yes.
And then they might hear, because it's the only solution that they have, but you're dependent on this fragile, error-prone solution that doesn't scale, that doesn't share data well. And then when they start to explore what other kind of tools they have available for budgeting, it's easier to find financial tools that allow you to do kind of business forecasting. How many driver or how many sales are we going to have? How many units are we going to move? But when it gets down to actually how do we allocate labor, taking into account the labor model and the unique attributes of the stores, there really has not been a good solution for that available on the market. The workforce management vendors have kind of tried to deliver this over the last few years, or well, over the last many years, but really nothing has really kind of hit the mark in terms of what a retailer can use to manage payroll as their payroll budget maybe as effectively as they need to until now, right? Axiom recently announced, and this is a little bit of a sales pitch because it's so unique. Axiom recently announced the release of Planera, which is a labor budgeting solution, and it's gotten incredible interest from our customers for all of the reasons why I talked about. And Michael, maybe you can talk a little bit more about what Planera does and how it solves this problem.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Bob. So yeah, so Planera, as Bob mentioned, really addresses that issue of payroll flexibility by bringing everybody together into one common platform, right? When you have all of these different Excel spreadsheets flying all over the place and macros written in, et cetera, it gets really easy to get out of sync really fast. And so it really helps align and improve the control and collaboration during this planning and allocation process. It also really accelerates it, right? So if you can imagine taking 500, 600, 700 spreadsheets to try to generate a labor budget, that takes a lot of time. And so by having everything, baked in, integrated with, business structures from WFM systems, integrated, with Opus, our labor modeling system, or really any labor modeling system, it really helps to accelerate that process. But really the power of it is that ability to perform, to do the analytics and perform detailed what if analysis. What if we increase, what if 6 months from now, we increase the wage rate in EMEA by 1%? And what if we introduce some workforce automation, aka robots? What if we put some robots in place, and that allows us to change our labor model a little bit in terms of the number of hours required in the store? What impact is that going to have on our labor budget? But only if we do it in these particular stores, right? And so being able to just flip some levers around the way and generate a new labor forecast and a new labor budget with both dollars and hours is just incredibly beneficial. And lastly, it helps people adapt to their changing realities, right? What's the number one rule of a labor budget? it's no good the minute it's published, right? Because if there's one thing that stays the same, is that everything changes all the time. And so being able to make these, to be able to adapt on the fly to the changing operational realities of your business, that just puts a tremendous amount of power in your hands, and visibility to really to give you that agility that you need in today's market.
You know what else it adds to it is the communication, right? I mean, I remember being a regional trying to explain why I needed some more labor in some stores, less labor in other stores, and how it all, why, and what we were trying to get done, the square footage, or just, the dynamics of the stores. It's interesting that the communication, like the story changes, right? Now I have data, now we have information that this is what it takes. If you build this the right way, if you're using Planera the right way, I've got the right drivers. I know what it takes to get labor completed, the task complete. I know what it is, how much it is to work with our customers. And you have so much data that goes into Planera, the talk track, I guess, to both top down and bottom up can now meet in the middle and have a conversation about this shortage or overage or whatever it is that you're having. I think that is a benefit that you don't even really think about it when you're thinking about the technology, but wow, that's would have been really different in my position being in the stores. That would have been very helpful. So let's move into our third. So we've got two really important, I mean, if we only had those two, we'd be busy, right? But now let's add our third one, and it's employee flexibility. And this is one that I think is very interesting. We have been talking about this at every conference that we get to speak at, which is, I think there's a little confusion around what really employee flexibility looks like. So Michael, I'll turn it over to you. Start us out with, that employee voice, right? So one of the things that I've been talking about at these conferences has been, think of it as the triangle, right? And at the bottom, two corners of the triangle, you have to get stuff done in the stores, tasks. You have the employee voice, which it's been really loud in taking over tasks and business operations and just the effective use of how to manage a business. This voice got really loud. Everything bubbles up to the top. It's your customer experience at the top of it. So if you're too loud in one area, like if you're too focused on tasks or not enough focused on the employee, the balance is so important. So Michael, talk to us about the whole predictability and control piece.
Yeah, predictability is just so critical. So when I'm feeling especially nerdy, I like to really dig into these concepts of schedule stability, right? If you think about the things that you need to be happy and the things you need to feel secure, right? No matter what part of your life it's in, it's feeling stable, right? And so, when we think about things like the employee experience, that stability and that predictability of a schedule for an employee, especially a part-time employee, is critical. All right. Because they want to be able to know, looking out into the future, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, all right, this is when these are the hours I'm going to have here. Now, how am I going to supplement that? Bob mentioned earlier, the impacts of inflation, the impacts of the cost of everything that's going up. Well, that's impacting our frontline workers, right? And so they might need to be able to balance multiple jobs. They might be able to balance working for you as well as taking care of children or taking care of a parent. And they have to have that predictability to be able to do that. But they also want control, right? They also want to be able to have that flexibility to maybe put a shift out into a shift marketplace, an open shift marketplace, to have somebody help them out. That collaboration between employees, that collaboration and communication, and the WFM providers providing that platform for them. It's something that you can give to an employee that helps them. All right. And when an employee feels like you're helping them, they want to help you back. All right. And so really this is a huge driver for engagement.
Yeah.
Another huge driver of engagement is variety. Employees want not just control over when they work and maybe even where they work, but they also want control over what they do when they're at work. Mm-hmm. There was an interesting Dutch study that was done kind of coming out of the pandemic that looked at the relationship between work intensity and work variety with employee engagement. And what it showed was that as work intensity goes up, the variety of work goes down. And you can think about it like, hey, if I'm on the sales floor and I've got a lot of customers there, I'm doing a lot of selling and I can't really do anything else. But as that variety goes down and the intensity goes up, what happens is engagement goes down. And on the surface, that's really a scary idea for retailers, because after all, we're there to sell stuff. And if I'm selling more and I've got people single threaded through selling, shouldn't that be what I want? And of course that it is. But what's important to remember is that outside of spikes, we need to make sure that we're giving enough labor to our stores so that your employees have a bit of variety and aren't single threaded during the day, so that engagement remains high. But we can translate it to a different level as well, which is with task management right now. We're seeing a lot of retailers that really use the store manager as a bit of a gatekeeper within the store. They have a handheld that has the tasks on there, and then they kind of dole tasks out when needed to the employees. Getting that task solution in the hands of your employees gives them the ability to kind of pick their own things to do. Now, of course, you've got to manage that, right? You can't have everybody in the back room at the same time. But the idea is that if you give them control over what they do, and you give them enough, give the stores enough labor to do the work that needs to be done, which, by the way, that goes back to the last trend, which is the idea of payroll agility. You're going to create a better experience for your employees. You're also going to create a better experience for your customers. It's going to create that balancing act that Robin was talking just about a minute ago. I think the important thing to remember, whether we're talking about creating more predictable schedules, offering employees the ability to control their schedules, giving employees the ability to control when they work, all of these things are really related to technology, and to make sure that we're using technology as the guardrails to be able to enable the behavior and accomplish the goals that we want. Again, that kind of ties back to the workforce management modernization. But even if you're using a slightly out-of-date technology, most technologies allow you to do the types of things that we're talking about today. The last thing I'll say, and this kind of gets outside of technology a little bit, is around, again, around the idea of variety, which is that employees want the ability to develop their own skills, right? Frontline workers recognize that, hey, their job in a retail environment may not be where they are for their entire career. That doesn't mean that they want to grow. In fact, study after study, and I'm thinking about one in particular that came out from MIT recently, shows that companies that have greater retention, that have greater employee engagement, and this includes retailers, are those that give their frontline workers the ability to develop new skills and develop laterally, not just up from a career development perspective. So making sure you give your associates the ability to develop new skills helps give them that flexibility that they want as they grow within your organization.
That's a great point. I've been meaning to talk to you. I think I want to be a sushi chef. So I'm wondering, could I work on that skill? That's not where we're going.
Well, it would be one of those skills that we want you to work on that's going to contribute to Axiom. Just like one of those frontline workers, we want them to do something about what we do at our stores.
Oh, I see where this was going.
If we open up a sushi restaurant, though, I'll be sure to.
Okay. All right, great. I've been wanting to do this. So. That's great. Look, guys, this is a lot of information. So if we're not hitting on something that you particularly hear in one of our topics here, please feel free to go into the Q&A and drop us any kind of questions that you have down there so that we can catch them throughout the process. All right. So we've done quite a bit here. Now what we're going to tell you is that this trend, the next trend is it's work simplification. We just talked about variety. We just talked about balancing tasks, the employee voice. We talked to you about wage rate pressures, the budgeting. There was a lot we've talked about, and now we say you got to go back in the stores and simplify. But it's honestly what you do need to do, because you know, we were very complex in retail prior to 2020. And then we got into really thinking about this whole, like, now we need to think about the world of safety and sanitizing and security and distancing and how to set up our stores differently. Remember, you hired people that have never seen 2019. They don't know what that world looked like. They only know what 2020 and beyond looked like. So now how do you move into where you are today, the tasks that are happening in the store, what to keep, what to get rid of? And did you do it in an operational fashion, or was it just stop this, start this? I think there's I mean, the managers have to be, their heads have to be spinning. I don't, Bob, I mean, simplify. Okay, that's what we're gonna say.
I mean, to me, when we look at our stores and our stores labor model or operating model as a whole, I think we need to look at it through a lens of how can we simplify it. Over the last several years, we've added more and more tasks to the stores, and it's created more and more work that just isn't being done as well as it could be or as it should be. And it's creating higher labor costs and higher pressures in the store as a result of it. And when I think about our opportunity to simplify the stores, to me, there's a broad discussion around how do we simplify the labor model? How do we take tasks out that are either not necessary, redundant, or frankly, they don't add value? Right? That's the headline, is how do I simplify from that perspective? But then when we start, then we need to look at each task to say, how can we simplify that task further? Are we doing things that, again, are not necessary, are redundant, or don't add value to the process? You know, if we can simplify the stores, it's going to create a better experience. It's going to give more room to give people more variety to do more tasks or to do more things during the day, because they're not going to be doing mundane things. They're going to be focused on value add tasks, and those are going to be much clearer. It's also going to lower our payroll budget because we're going to be able to move through things more effectively. And Robin, it goes back to that model that you were talking about, where we've got tasks and we've got employees and we've got the customer at the top. When we get out of balance, we hurt the customer. If we simplify our stores, we simplify that task bucket and we create a better experience for our employees. So most broadly, we need to think about, again, simplification at the labor model level, and then think about simplification from a task level.
Right.
And, you know, so one of my favorite commercials of all time, it was this car commercial, and it said, you know, real people, not actors. And I always thought, well, you know, most actors are people.
Usually.
And so usually, I guess ET wasn't, but and I think,
but inside, I think he was.
yeah, but I think about that because I think about, we talk so much about employee engagement, but managers are employees too. We can't forget about the manager. Remember, so much as we talk about things that are added to the store, the managers had to take a lot of that stuff on. So, but I don't know if you know this about me, but my favorite part of my job is approving my team's time off requests. It's nothing brings me greater joy than to perform that administrative task. And so things like being able to automatically approve time off requests, being able to automatically approve swap requests, having a system do that as opposed to a manager. Simplify by leveraging the technology that's out there and that's available, so that the manager can really focus on supporting employees and supporting customers. And the more that you can automate the things that can be automated, the more that, you know, the more that you can use artificial intelligence, so to speak, as opposed to that human intelligence, the more that the you know, the managers can focus on really supporting your staff, supporting your associates, and growing the organization.
I think that's a really good point, Michael. And I think that for a lot of retail organizations, that automation of manager tasks is low-hanging fruit. I mean, let's keep in mind that ultimately the heartbeat of any store is the manager, right? If the manager is overwhelmed, the store is overwhelmed. And ultimately, I think the manager bore the brunt of this of all the new tasks that got layered on in it kind of over the last couple of years. And kind of one of the reasons why we're mentioning managers as part of the trends is because time and time again, as we're getting engaged with our clients in the field, one of the things that we're doing is we're looking at the manager's job and really working to effectively redesign what the manager is doing. And the reason why that's vital is not just because the manager is your heartbeat of your store, but right now they're one of the people that are most likely to leave. There was a McKinsey study that came out recently that talked about how more than 60% of retail managers are considering leaving their job and taking a new job in the next 12 months. I mean, that would be devastating for a retailer to lose 60% of their managers in the next 12 months because your heartbeat of the store goes away. So it really is important to look at your managers, try to simplify their jobs. And while you're doing that, you're going to end up simplifying the work in the stores.
Yeah, absolutely. And even if it's 50%, I mean, I know in retail, we're used to having turnover. It's just, At the manager level, the attrition isn't so high, right? Because they're the ones that are there for the career, the upward mobility. And for them to take the big brunt of it, I think right now that's a good place to really start. You know, interestingly enough, I know that retailers, you will probably just fall out of your chair right now or out of your stand-up desk or whatever you're doing. But I had a conversation with a customer who said, thanks to the work we did with them in a labor study, we evaluated, studied what the manager was doing on a day-to-day basis. That comes to find out that one day out of the week, they're just a bit administrative heavy in what they need to get done in their locations because they're multifaceted what they sell. And they realize that in one day that the manager spends 10 hours in the back room. That's just think of that as the number in their office, right? Administratively. And but they get interrupted. So the interruption cost to stop and say, it's back here, it's this, I need that, you know, whatever it is, versus giving them the opportunity to work from home X number of hours a week on one day, finish your administrative tasks through tools, technology. And then when you come back to the location, you're on the floor, you know, you're engaged. Oh my God, if I would have had that when I was in retail, you bet I would be so productive in my pajamas versus being interrupted, having to get on the sales floor, go do a return. I mean, seriously, little things like that can make such a huge difference. So again, I told you we could go 25 minutes or more per topic. So love to talk to you guys more about what we found and, you know, the impacts those can make for you. Let's move to embracing today's customer experience. We talked about the triangle. This one's a really important turn of what's happening, of events happening, moving into the holiday season and beyond into 2023. There's this visual. We were at a conference and I love this visual. We were talking about the difference between, remember earlier I said you probably hired a lot of people in 2020 that never saw 2019, right? So all they know is being in a certain era of your retail business. And one of our customers said, okay, we have to start visualizing this different. You've got to different. You need to start thinking about customer experience as belly to belly. Now, that seems very close. That seems a little too close, obviously. Ask Bob, he's a big hugger. But you get the visual, right? We were worried about space, 12 feet. We were worried about making sure that we didn't really help you, but we helped from afar. Get the technology right so they can do self-serve. People like interaction. That's what we found out. They like high touch. They like to be talked to, if that's right. They like to have conversations. So this is, you guys, this is going to be hard in some cases, especially for all of us that are used to 100% turnover in the front line. So customer experience. I mean, talk us through this, you guys. Michael, I know you have some theories on this.
I do. I have a story. I'm not exactly what you would call handy. And so I had to go to, I needed a screw, right? And it was like this big. And so I needed a second one. And so I went to the local home improvement store and somebody approached me and said, you know, how can I help you? And I said, well, I need this. So instead of just pointing me down to where they have the bins of them, he walked me down and he got exactly what I needed. I don't know if it's in inches or millimeters or megatrons. It's just a screw to me, right? And but like he didn't make me feel like an idiot, like the idiot I am when it comes to these sorts of things. And at the end, I think it was 7 cents. And at the end, he said, you know, can I help you with anything else? So I live in New England, and the leaves are falling, and I hate raking. I said, I deserve to look at a leaf blower, right? So he brought me over to where the leaves. So I bought a $187.07 screw and got a free leaf blower, because but because he seemed like he actually cared about helping me, and it wasn't just point and go get it and it's in aisle 6. It was he brought me down. He took care of me as a customer. And so not only did I buy more than 7 cents worth of stuff, I'll go back there. And, you know, so they not only got that sale, but and I couldn't help think, because again, nerd, I couldn't help think that, boy, this guy is just super engaged. He likes what he does, and he likes people like me because he can help them. And I got to thinking about what his experience with his management must be like. And so yeah, I thought that was it. Bob, I need a $187 raise, please.
But that's back to the good old days. Do you remember? Like, I mean, I was so good at adding on when I was in the Gap. If we got a memo out for the day that said, we got to get rid of all the socks in the store because we're out of socks. We're out of the sock business. We're like, okay, because they're going to give us $1 per sock, that we sold. Everybody walked out with 14 pairs of socks, right? It was, you had to have it. You told the story. It was all about selling the socks. That was the good old days when when you had somebody, it was a real selling effort in the stores.
Well, what's funny is I love that. I love both stories, right? I love it both from the client side or from the customer side, and I love it from the retail associate side of the impact of kind of upselling or engagement. And it's one of those things where at the same time, I had a conversation not so long ago with an executive who said, I feel like I throw labor at the store, but I don't see a change. I don't see an impact. Why is that? What does labor really do for me in the store? And it reminds me of, all of this reminds me of a study that we did not so long ago with one of our customers, focused on the impact of the associate in the store, and in particular on the sale. This particular customer knew what their conversion rate was, which was kind of in the upper 50% range, that they knew that every customer that walked in the store, they were going to end up, selling to, roughly 60% of them. But what they wanted to know was, I spend a lot on labor. When my associates are in the store, if they're engaging with a customer, does that help me or does it not help me? What's the benefit of an associate talking with a customer on my conversion rate, or is there a benefit?
Yeah.
So we ended up doing a study looking at that problem, and what we identified is that if a customer just went in and worked on their own, they were more likely than not to buy, but the actual conversion rate was closer to about 55%. However, when that associate engaged the customer, that conversion rate shot up to over 67%. So it was a 12% increase in terms of their likelihood to buy because they were engaged with an associate. And so if you can increase the amount of engagement, you're going to drive a little bit more conversion as a result of it. I think the other thing that was really interesting about this study is we looked at basket size. So of those 55% that bought that weren't engaged with the customer versus the 67% that were engaged with a customer, were they buying the same thing? No, they weren't. Maybe they weren't being as extreme as Michael's $187 screw that he got a leaf blower with. But what we found was that there was, on average, a 4% lift from those that got engaged. And it could be considerably higher, as we heard here. So really understanding when to invest associates' time in selling is vital to being able to engage customers and create kind of not just a better experience, but ultimately create higher revenue. Talk about real ROI. So anyway,
yeah,
interesting stuff on the experience here.
We were just having this conversation when I was on site this week, and that was actually one of the questions I think that everybody talks about of what's the magic to getting, if there's slack back into the store, or if there's labor that we saved, from adding technology or putting in something new for the ease of use, what do you do with that time? Where does it go? Because I remember that when I was in the stores, if you said I had an extra 20 hours to use during that week, go drive your revenue, I was very operational. So I would make sure the store was clean, it was easy to use, you could get around it, that we had efficiencies at the cash wrap. But my buddy down the street, who was very visual, took their time and put it into all new visual aspects through the store. So everybody was using the time differently versus where can you concentrate the effort to drive the revenue, drive the service, drive the ROI. That is, when you get that right, that's the magic. That's when it all kind of comes together. So Michael, anything else you want to add on that one? We all good?
No, we're good.
All right. So let me just finish up with what we normally like to do, which is we never want to leave you hanging on what can we do for you, right? So I want to just go back through them so you see them all on one page, right? So these were the 5 trends. I didn't see any questions as of right now. We just scratched the surface. I would really encourage you to reach out to us to have these in-depth conversations of things that are impacting you. I know all 5 of them probably are, but which one is the most painful for you right now? So Bob, why don't you kick us off?
Well, yeah, the first trend we talked about at the outset was around modernization. As we said at the time, it feels like everybody is looking to modernize their WFM system. And so whether it's understanding what modernization can mean to you, just in terms of if I migrate from the tool that I've got to something new, what's the benefit going to be? We can certainly help you through that. Then, of course, if you're starting that move to a new solution, certainly we can help either with hands-on workforce management expertise or simply, provide great guidance through that process. This is what we do.
Great.
As far as payroll agility goes, there's Planera, right? It really helps you to align, accelerate, analyze, and adapt your whole labor planning process, bring everybody together. It's simple to use, and I think you'd be blown away by the reporting.
Yeah, and an employee flexibility, it's what we said, which is it's predictable with flexibility in it. And you can use that through a couple of different ways. And you need to actually make a conscious decision on what a policy is in terms of your enablement. Say it out loud, put it out there, have the policy, design it with your employee voice. And then know that there are so many ways that you can digitally and with the technology interact with the employee and giving them the flexibility that they need.
And how can we untangle all of the knot that's in your labor model right now to simplify what's going on within your stores, both at the labor model level and at the task level? So really looking at not just how you're doing, but how you're doing compared to others, benchmarking. How do we simplify that labor model? And then ultimately, how do we redesign the jobs within your store, whether that's the manager's job to simplify their task or some of the other jobs as well. That workforce simplification is vital to creating an efficient operation.
And on the customer experience side, is the labor that you're putting to the stores really driving that experience? Is the labor that you're providing, the tasks that the associates are doing, is that driving revenue? Is it driving a better experience for customers? Is it getting them to spend a ridiculous amount of money on a screw? By focusing on, by helping to sort of take a step back and analyze that information, we can really help to drive, top line and help on the bottom line as well.
Great, thanks you guys. This is at the core of what we do. All 5 of these items are where we play very, very well. We know the technology, we know workforce management, we know this space. We know what's happening to you guys, what's impacting you, and we have solutions, whether it's through the technology side of it, helping you with processes, design, really just kind of working through labor models and the assessments and the future. What do you want to look like? We help in all of those ways and would love to be a partner with you if we aren't already. So this is how you can get a hold of us. It's usually, for all of us, it's our first initial, our last names, no doctor in the Gondak, sorry. With the Axiom group. So please, you guys, I can't thank you enough for, number one, showing up today, for all of the time zones that you're on. We had some great participants. And I would really like to thank Bob and Michael for the insight. And if you want more information, please reach out, you guys. Have a wonderful day wherever you are. Thank you very much.